Hello everyone, welcome to my step-by-step guide to air dribbles. In this video I'm going to be talking about air dribble settings as well as hitboxes. I'm going to be talking about what good air dribble settings are and how each setting is going to change the way your air dribble is going to look. And then I'm also going to be talking about different hitboxes, what are the best hitboxes for air dribbling, what are different properties of the different hitboxes that are going to affect your air dribbles. Now for a quick little TLDR for those who are not really interested in any explanations, good camera settings for air dribbles is going to be something closer to the car than usual, around 150 to 200. I would recommend 170. Height, 60 is good. Angle, -5 is good. Stiffness, you want 1 stiffness and you want a high transition speed. For aerial sensitivity, you want to have it as low as possible, so 1 is preferred. Steering sense doesn't really matter. Controller dead zone, you want something on the lower side, so 0.04, 0.05, 0.06, 0.07, around there is good. And dodge dead zone, you probably want to have it quite high to avoid flipping. And for bindings, the main thing is that you want to have both directional air rolls bound. So R2, L2 is what I use. You can use R1, L1, you can use circle and square, or like B and X. Just make sure you have both bound. And those are good air dribble settings. And for hitboxes, you want to use breakout. That's the best hitbox. Now, why are these good settings for air dribbles? Let's start talking about directional arrow. I'll put it back to my own settings. And I also want to say that I'm going to be recommending a lot of settings that are different from my own. And the reason that I have the settings that I have is so that I can play competitive at a certain level and also air dribble. You can learn to air dribble with pretty much any type of settings. I'm just going to be talking about what the best settings are, which is going to be different from my own, right? So yeah. Now, let's talk about directional air roll. This is one of the most important things if you want to get good at air dribbles. What is it that directional air roll really does, right? You press one button, you air roll left. You press one button, you air roll right. This allows you to move your car or steer your car in the air to the left or the right, or the right, while air rolling. And now the main thing that's important for air dribbles is this allows you to tornado spin. Now, a tornado spin, for those of you who do not know, is when you put your stick in one direction or steer in one direction, like right in this case, and then you air roll in the other. So you see when I jump, I air roll right and air roll left and steer right. This is going to give me this tornado spin, and I can do it in the other direction. So this is air roll right and steer left. Now, while air dribbling, you don't really see a lot of spinning necessarily, but you're going to be doing a lot of these types of movement to just stay under the ball, make adjustments under the ball. If you want to spin around to the other side, do a 180, this is the type of movement that you're going to do. And the reason this is kind of important versus, for example, using just universal air roll to turn around, or just using basic adjustments left, right, forward, back, right, is if I try to do, or like turn left, for example, without directional arrow, I need to do something like this, where I have to put my car sideways before I can get all the way around. And in general, with air dribbles, you don't want to have your car sideways. You want to keep it straight. So, because if you have your car sideways, the ball's going to roll off, or you're going to fly away from the ball. If you use tornado spins to make adjustments, you're always going to be flying into the ball and have the ball balance nicely on top of your nose. So, yeah. The next setting I'm going to be talking about is aerial sensitivity. Now, you want to have aerial sensitivity as low as possible, so preferably 1. Now, steering sensitivity doesn't really matter. That's on the ground, not in the air. We're talking about air dribbles. So aerial sensitivity at 1. Now, why does this matter? Well, in air dribbles, you want to have as precise movements as possible. Precision is key. You want to make the movement that you want to make, right? You don't want to turn left and then turn too far left. You don't want to turn right and turn too far right. Just being very precise and getting the exact movement that you want is very important. And that's having low sensitivity is going to help with that. Controller dead zone, you want low kind of for the same reason. If you have a higher controller dead zone, your movements are going to start at a higher stick movement percentage, right? So if right now with 0.2 controller dead zone, I have to move my stick 20% of the way before I start steering, which is going to give me a less total room for available, say, base of like different movements of my car. So right now, if I have 0.2, I can only move my car from 20% stick steering or stick movement to 100%, versus if I have it at 0.06, I have the entire 94% range rather than the 80% range. It's a bit more, it's a bit better, and it's gonna help a bit with your control. It's also gonna make it feel more responsive when you move your stick. Like let's say it's 0.2 and I want to go from right to left. I have to do an entire 40% steering difference for it to actually go from left to right. Versus if I have it at 0.06, which is I use, it's that 40% goes down to 12%. It feels a lot more smooth going from left to right, a lot more responsive. So that's why having a low dead zone is important. Dodge dead zone is not that important. You probably should have it higher if you want to have something that's purely for air dribbles, because you're not going to be doing a lot of flips while air dribbling. And even if you do a flip, it doesn't have to be very quick. You don't have to do a lot of fancy flip cancelling. Usually with an air dribble, you're just going to do a pop into the air. Or if you're fancy, you could do like a musty at the end of an air dribble. But that doesn't require low dodge dead zone, so you can have this quite high. So low aerial sensitivity, low controller dead zone, and higher dodge dead zone. For camera, field of view 110, standard. Distance, you want it to be closer to your car. Now this is for a very, very simple reason. If the camera is closer to your car, it's closer to the ball. And that's gonna make it a lot easier to see where you're touching the ball. You know, see the ball's bigger, the target is bigger, it's easier to hit it where you want to. Now these are not good settings right now. Like you can see, I can barely see my car. I still, even though I can see the ball very clearly, I can't actually see very clearly where I'm supposed to hit the ball. And that's where changing your height comes in. See, already like in the background you can see it. Drastic change. Putting your height lower makes it so that you can see under the ball. Now this is massively important, just because if you can see under the ball, you see the part of the ball that you want to hit. You can see very clearly where you want to hit the ball. And that's going to make it a lot easier to air dribble. If you use something that I usually use, like 90, you probably would need a bit more distance if you're going to use 90. You can see in my air dribbles is I can't really see under the ball as much. I have to play a bit more by feel, right? Which it's learnable, but it's a lot harder. So low height is the game changer if you want to get good at air dribbles. Angle, I'll get back to a bit later. It's a bit complicated. Stiffness, 1. You want to have 1 stiffness. And the main reason for that is the camera follows the car perfectly, especially when you go around the ball. Like if I go under the ball here to the other side, it's very smooth, follows me exactly. I know exactly when I'm on the other side of the ball. I know exactly where I am compared to the ball. That's the important part. if I put this to be lower, just a bit for exaggeration, let's put 1, and I start to air dribble and I go around the ball, the camera follows very delayed, so it's a bit harder for me to see exactly where I am compared to the ball, and it's a bit disorienting. When you're trying to do a 180 or like any type of turn, it's kind of difficult just to see like where are you, like where are you aiming. It's just a lot easier with 1 stiffness. And obviously 0.1 is very over exaggerated. Very few people use this low stiffness, but the higher you have, the easier it's going to be. Now let's talk about angle. Angle is a bit difficult because, I mean, if you're talking about competitive settings, right, and you're talking about angle, it makes a huge deal. A lot of people will talk about the difference between -3, -4, or -4 between -5. But while air dribbling, these changes don't actually change that much. Like going from -3 to -5 is not a big change for air dribbles. It's going to change a bit, yes. But if you see on the ground, right, and I change this, it's going to change by quite a bit like what you see. But let's go into the air real quick. See if I can like stick something like this. Okay. And I change it now. If you just look in the background, it barely changes anything. Now let me go a bit back in time here. Just freeze the ball here. If I go to -15, you can see that the camera's changed a bit. It's noticeable now. But if I go back to -5, the changes, it's not that much. So you see kind of the same thing. -15 will allow you to see more forwards, right? Allows you to see what's going on in front of you a bit better. Having it lower, it's gonna make it so that you see more upwards, up to the sky. I probably wouldn't recommend 0. You want to see slightly what's in front of you. Now there is one thing I haven't mentioned. Changing your angle, at least for me, changes the feel of the air dribble by a lot. It's not something like concretely different when air dribbling. Like what you see is pretty much the same, but the feel is off. Right? If I go from -3 to -4, I can feel that difference. Or like -4 to -3, I mean, or -4 to -5. I can feel that difference. I can't really see it, but I can feel it. But this feel is something that you get used to. So if you, let's say you choose to air dribble at -10, you can get used to that pretty quickly. It's not going to be necessarily bad. You can air dribble at -15. It's not going to be bad. It's just going to be a bit of a different feel than to a lower angle. So yeah, play around with angle. Maybe use something similar to what you've used before. So if, for example, if you want to change your camera settings to air dribble settings from what you use in comp, and you use like -4 in comp, then you can use -4 in air dribbles. That's fine. That's going to be good. So yeah. So for a recommended setting here, like I recommend 170 distance, 60 height, angle, I would recommend like -5. It's good. You can see a bit forwards. You don't see straight up into the sky, and it should be pretty similar to the feel of air dribbles of what you might use in comp, right? Let's talk quickly about transition speed. This isn't really relevant for air dribbles. You don't switch between, you don't need to like use car cam while air dribbling, right? Well, you're gonna use it a bit. And the reason you would want high transition speed, which I mentioned earlier, is, let's say I'm air dribbling and I wanna, or yeah, let's try to go a bit up. So I don't really, if I go up now, I'm gonna be a bit blind. I'm not really seeing where I'm going. I can turn on car cam, that's gonna allow me to see where I'm going. Now this was a terrible display because I'm not very good with these settings. But the idea of it is that if you turn on car cam, you can see where you're going. And if you have a lower transition speed, you can't really like go from watching the ball, oh there I'm going there, and then switch back. It takes a lot of time. Versus if I put it to what I usually use, I can look at the ball, air dribble while looking at the ball, then boop, now I know where I'm going. It's like a lot faster. This is the idea. So that's why high transition speed is important for air dribbles. It's not very important, but it's better. That's it for settings, I will quickly talk about video settings. For certain maps, if you're learning air dribbles, you might be doing a bit of workshop maps. And for some maps, you want to turn off light lens flares, light shafts. You don't want to have these on. Some maps, the ball gets really dark, or the car gets really dark if you have shadows on. So you probably want to turn that off. In general, probably the best settings are just going to be like typical comp video settings. You have everything on low on the right side, and then you have high quality render quality. And yeah, high amount of frames per second as well helps. So yeah. Now, let's talk about hitboxes, my favorite part. Hitboxes are really interesting. I might not be able to explain why, but I'm going to explain the differences. Yep. Okay, let me open BoxMod so I can get the hitbox plugin so you can see the hitbox. Here we go. This is the hitbox for the car that I use. Now, one thing that it's important to know right away is this little ball inside of the hitbox. You see it's under the square, or under the box itself. For this car anyways, this circle is the center of mass. Everything spins around this, and this is, yeah, what the game uses, like when your game like gives a coordinate for your car. Let's say for calculating who gets the boost first, it needs to know where the car is, and that's going to be based on this little thing. Now that's not very relevant for air dribbles, but something that is very relevant for air dribbles is the reach of the hitbox. So I'll quickly explain a tiny bit of hit detection. So you hit the ball, and the game does a lot of complicated calculation of where the ball's going to go. But there's one part of the calculation that's very important to understand right now, and it's that when you hit the ball, the game draws an arrow from this little center of mass to the center of the ball. Now, if this center of mass was closer to the tip of my car, that arrow would be shorter. So if I switch over to a different hitbox, let's switch over to the Merc. Now, the center of mass is going to be closer to the tip of the hitbox, so when I hit the ball, that arrow is going to be drawn shorter. And that's literally just going to give less power to the touch onto the ball. If that arrow is longer, that means more power. If that arrow is shorter, that means less power. So, what we want for our air dribbles is we want as much power onto the ball while like dribbling the ball, right? And therefore, it's important for that distance between the center of mass to the tip of your hitbox to be as long as possible. And I'll quickly show some of the other hitboxes. We have Breakout, which is the best card for air dribbling. We already established that. This has the most distance from center of mass to the tip of the hitbox. Now we call this reach, distance by the way. This is the reach of the car. Breakout has the most reach. The second most reach is the card that I use, Hybrid, or hitbox that I use. It's pretty close to the Breakouts. And then third is going to be Batmobile or Plank. And fourth, Dominus. Fifth, Octane. And last, Merc. Merc is awful for air dribbles. You'll see this a bit more in a bit. So Merc just straight up gets less power compared to the Breakout, a lot less power onto the ball while trying to air dribble. And yeah, this is the most important metric when you look at the different hitboxes. What makes a car good for air dribbling? The reach is the most important, the amount of power put onto the ball with a simple touch. Now, let's talk quickly about what I think is the second most important metric, which is going to be the height of the hitbox. The height when you're standing on the ground. So when you're air dribbling, that height is going to basically turn into the width. This is like almost the surface area of where you're air dribbling onto. And intuitively, you'd probably think you want a lot of height. It's going to make it easier to balance the ball on top of your car. That's simply just not true, though. You want the height to be as low as possible. So, again, Merc scores the worst. It's got the tallest hitbox. Now, let me try and explain to you why that is. When you're, let's say, when you're dribbling, right? When you're dribbling with a really wide car, plank is the widest car. When you're trying to go from one side to the other, it takes a bit more time with the plank versus if you have a slimmer car like the Octane. This car is less wide and is quicker going left to right while dribbling, which is going to make it better for turns for dribbling, right? Compared to the plank. Now, it might be easier, at least for dribbling, to balance the ball on top of the car with a plank, but it's going to be worse for turning while dribbling. This is the same thing that's kind of happening when you're air dribbling. If you're in a short hitbox, plank, shortest, making adjustments, going from one angle to another, turning with the car, it's going to feel a lot more responsive. You're going to be able to make adjustments under the ball, change direction of the ball, all of this a lot faster, which is going to make it easier. When you have a car like the Merc, just air dribbling is going to feel very sluggish, right? If you try to go from one angle to another, push it, try to go under the ball, all of these things, anything you want to try to do with an air dribble is going to take much longer, which is why you don't want this height. The taller the car, the worse it is for air dribbling. The shorter the car, the better it is. So, Breakout is the second shortest car, and then Plank is the shortest in height, right? And then let's move on to the last metric. This one, we're going to talk about center of mass again. For the last metric, we were talking about reach, so we want the center of mass to be positioned as far back on the car as possible, right, to get a better reach. For this, I don't know what to call it, but we want the center of mass to be as high as possible, or as middle as possible in the vertical axis. Now, let me explain something, right? You see this hitbox that I use. The center of mass is under the car. It's or not under the car, but under the hitbox that we use for air dribbling, outside of the box itself, right? And because the entire car spins around this, right? When I'm in the air, standing still, and I do a roll, my entire hitbox moved, right? So if I'm under the ball, air dribbling, right? And I spin, now my entire hitbox is somewhere else, right? So to compensate for this, at least with this car, when you do spins under the ball, you have to move your stick a bit forward. If I'm like perfectly pointed up, I want to turn around, I have to move my stick forwards to stay under the ball. This makes it so that if you're trying to like go accelerate as fast as possible straight up and you want to do a spin, you just straight up cannot go as fast as possible because you have to be pointing your nose a bit more forwards to be able to stay under the ball. Compare this to the Breakout, which has the opposite of the hybrid. The center of mass is in the hitbox much closer to center. Now, when I spin, the car still is going to move a bit because it's still somewhat bottom heavy, the car. But the amount of forward you have to press on your stick, or how amount of forward you want to face your nose, point your nose, is less, right? Which is when you're going to go straight up, accelerate as much possible straight up, doing 180s around the ball. you're not almost not even gonna notice the fact that your hitbox is moving, versus if you're using the hybrid, which is the worst. The center of mass is the most outside of the hitbox. You have to be kind of conscious, at least when practicing or starting to learn, that your entire hitbox is moving. So yeah, those are the three metrics. I'll go through the metrics for height. So the tallest car is the Merc, second tallest Octane, third tallest Hybrid. So this is a bad metrics. You don't want your car to be tall, right? Fourth tallest Dominus, fifth tallest, or yeah, Breakout, and then the shortest in height Plank. So the best for this metric. For center of mass, or like being as close to center as possible, I haven't really calculated this, but the best car is the Breakout. The second best is going to be Batmobile Plank. Third best, I think Dominus. Yeah, I think Dominus. Then Merc. Merc is not the worst in this. And then Octane, and the worst Hybrid. So what's the best car for air dribbling? Well, if you look at all the metrics, it's clearly Breakout, right? Breakout is just the second best in height, best in center of mass being middle, and the best in reach. Second best car for air dribbles, however, is a bit difficult to decide. I would say that both Plank and Hybrid are very valid options. They're just as good as each other, in my opinion. You're going to get more power onto ball touches using the Hybrid, but it's going to be easier to control the car and the ball with Batmobile / Plank. Fourth best car for air dribbling, Dominus. Fifth best, Octane. And last, Merc. Now there's one thing I also want to say. You can air dribble in any car. You can be good with air dribbling in any car. The only car that is significantly bad is the Merc. Other than the Merc, you can use the Octane and be perfectly... You can be good at air dribbling. You can get really good at air dribbling with Octane. You can get really good at air dribbling in Dominus, Batmobile, Hybrid, and of course Breakout. You can get really good in the Merc, but the Merc is a lot worse than the Octane. Octane is a perfectly fine car to air dribble, but Merc is not. So yeah, hopefully you learned something there about hitboxes and settings. That is going to be my video about this, and hope you got something useful out of it. Bye.